Welcome to another episode of Hardcore Human Design. I'm happy to be here. I'm Miko, and we have Celestina on the other side.
Ayo.
Pretty literally even, Australia. Well, actually, now that I'm here, it's not really literally on the other side of the world, but...
We're pretty close now. Like, geographically pretty close.
We're moving closer and closer. So, how has your week been?
Whew. Dude, this week was a doozy, an emotional roller coaster, some would say, for a non-emotional being. In my day job, I fired someone that was much needed, and damn, I can tell you, that was a strong heart pull to let them go.
Very good.
I haven't had a strong heart pull like that since I took this job like 2 months ago, and it was such a strong heart pull to let this dude go and like have another person that I'm gonna let go. Like, I informed them, hey yo, manifestor doing what she's supposed to do. I informed this person that he will be gone in a week and a half. So all of that felt really, really good, and I might be on one tonight because I'm still riding that high. So please bear with me as we record this episode tonight. What about you?
My week was good. I've been riding dunes. I went
literally
quad biking. Yeah.
Oh, sick.
So that was really fun. We had an hour and I was just, enjoying it so much.
Why am I picturing you in Doc Martens? Like riding. Were you wearing Doc Martens? Dude.
I was wearing Timberlands, but it was brown leather boots kind of thing.
It's so German.
But I was not prepared for quad biking. It was a surprise, and then I ended up being on that quad, and after the ride, because I went a bit wild, I basically broke the heel of my boot and the leather a little bit. So now I have to figure out how to get them fixed, because we went to 5 different shoe stores here, and there's just no way to get them fixed here.
Kein Schumacher?
Well, they do have shoe makers, but I couldn't find anyone that has material to cover the sole again. But
damn,
it was
dude.
Fun. It was worth it. I mean, they're also really old already. I probably had these boots for 10 years. I love these boots, but
they're vintage, as the kids say.
So my week has been pretty good. I had a training Monday and Tuesday, which also went really well.
Yay!
Flying to Bahrain on tomorrow. So, yeah.
On the tomorrows. So good. Dope, dude. I'm happy you had a good week.
Thank you. Me too. I'm happy you're riding a high as well today.
Ooh. I was even going to do a card pull before this, but I totally spaced on that because I ended up doing like the roster for next week instead, but I'll probably do a card pull after this episode. So just to like fully center, you know?
Well, today we are going to be talking about profiles.
I'm stoked. This is a really fun topic.
It is, and it's going to help whoever is listening really dig deeper into their human design, because while the profiles are one part of your design, at the moment we've stuck to all the things that we can see on the human design body graph itself. So we looked at the defined areas and undefined areas, and the profile is not actually something you see colored or not colored. It is combining the conscious sun and earth with the unconscious sun and earth. So you will have a line for each of these planets, and the conscious sun and earth will have the same line because they're smack dab on the opposite side of one another. And the unconscious side is the same way. So you have to combine these two numbers. And I'm going to share the screen so that you can see it here on YouTube if you're watching it, just to show you where you can find it. And I'm going to try to describe it for everyone that is not watching. So I've created a little chart to show you where you can find it for everyone that's watching. And if you're not watching, I'm going to explain it as well as I can. So here you can see a generator example. And on the right side, on the personality side, you will see your Earth, which is a circle with a cross inside of it. And you will see the Sun, which is a circle with another tiny circle inside of it. And you will see one big number, which is the gate. And then there's a point. And behind that point, you will have another number. So that is the line. And we are going to be focusing on the line of personality, Sun and Earth, and the line of design, Sun and Earth. So in this case, you can see a generator, a 5-1 generator. And you always take the personality side first, so the black aspects of your chart, and you place that as the first number for your profile, and the second number is the red number in your chart, the line of those numbers. The first thing to understand about profiles is that this is basically a costume you're putting on. And the different sides of the profile, so the first number in your profile is your personality side, which is also representing your character. And the second number is your design side of your profile and your unconscious aspect, which is representing your vehicle. So your vehicle in human design is considered as your body. And this is also how we try to make decisions in human design, through our body. And this is also kind of where a lot of challenges reside, because our personality thinks we are one version of us, and our body thinks we are a different kind of version of us. And we're trying to kind of merge these two things together and understand who we are. And while this is a costume that we're wearing, it's important to try not to identify yourself with it. So this is kind of the trick. This is the thing that we're trying to achieve. We're trying to understand who we are in personality and in body without identifying ourselves and really feeling stuck in our ways by the influences that we are under.
That's such an interesting way of describing it. I've never heard it like as you're putting a costume on, but now like reflecting back, dude, 100%. Like, yeah, we'll get more into this. I'm not going to say too much.
No. I mean, this is one of Ra's favorite topics as well. He always quoted Shakespeare on this, where Shakespeare said, all life is a stage. Everything in the world, everything that happens around you is a stage. And he kind of transformed it into life is a movie. So we shouldn't take things too seriously.
Tell it to my anxiety.
Well, let's see if we can reduce that a little bit today. Yeah, let's start with line 1. And once you understand the lines of each profile, so the profile, there are 12 profiles overall, and there are 6 lines that these profiles can be made up of. And these lines are represented in a hexagram. So before we're jumping into line 1 just on its own, I think it's just important to understand the structure first. And this hexagram, you have 6 lines in this hexagram. So all of this insight comes from the I Ching. There are 64 different kinds of hexagrams, and they're all made up of these 6 lines. And then the bottom 3 lines are the lower trigram, which has a very personal touch to it. So it's all about you and your life, and it's very centered or self-centered in itself, the lower trigram. And the upper trigram is more transpersonal or interpersonal. So people that are more in the upper trigram are going to have a very transpersonal, interpersonal kind of life. So whoever is in their life is going to impact them a little more than a lower trigram individual. And most of us are going to be a combination of both. And then it's important to check if it's your personality that's in the lower trigram, or if it's your body that's in the lower trigram. So all of these things become very deep into there's just so much to know about the lines, and it's a very, very complex topic. Before I give the mic to Celestina, I would like to just explain the basics of it. So there's this representation of the house to just get people started on understanding the lines. And the house, when you look at the foundation of the house, that would be line 1. When you look at the ground floor of the house, so this is where you have the windows and where people can look into the house. So the light is on in the first floor, so people can look in, but the line 2 cannot look outside. And then we have the ceiling of the first floor, and that would be the line 3. So they're kind of already on the way to passing to the interpersonal side, but they're still in the personal realm of things. And then we have line 4, which is the ground floor of the second floor. And that also, again, has to do a lot with foundation and safety and security, but it's still going to be a little different, as we will discover. And then we have line 5, and that would be represented by the second floor, where it's dark inside. So no one can look in, but when they try to look in, their reflections will show in the windows. And then we have line 6, and that would be the roof. And line 6 is a pretty complex mix of several different things, which we will get into. But for now, Celestina, would you like to start with line number 1?
Yes. Can I backtrack real quick? Because the first time I heard you explain this was in Italy in 2022. And let me go back. We had a retreat in Italy in 2022, and that's why it's the first time I heard all of that go down. But it was so eye-opening, I think, to understand it in this way and for you to represent it as a house, right? Because it shows you not necessarily different stages of development, but like the role that different people play in the world and how some things can be projected, like a 5-line versus, yeah, we're going to get into all of this, but it was just such an aha moment to hear it like that. So I'm really happy that we started the episode off in this way. So line 1, the Investigator. If you have a line 1, you are going to go deep on the information. And like you're maybe already in like a research-based field, or you really love going deep in on the research, and that is inherently part of you, especially if it's in your personality, right? Like if you're a 1-3, for example, like you're going deep. You're probably, my aunt is a line 1, and she researches like 4 different restaurants every time they like want to go out to dinner before she like actually books one. And back when like MapQuests was a thing, she would like print out all of the maps, print out like the whole itinerary for the trip, send it to the whole family, even if they weren't going. But like that's who she is inherently. So it's really cool to see an aligned line 1 in action, right? Because if you're stoked on something, right, if you're really lit up about it, you're going to go deep and learn everything there is to know about that something. And then people can pull it out of you when, like, it's not something that you're going to, like, store in this one file for one specific reason, right? But, like, if someone can pull it out of you, you're going to have all of the information there. And it's so cool to see a line 1 go off and be like, about whatever, you know? So that's my 2 cents on the line 1.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they really love digging deep into things. And while it is a love that they have, it also gives them a sense of security. So they actually need to do that to feel safe. A line 1 is usually not someone that you would send up onto a stage and say, hey, just present whatever you want without preparation. This would be one of their nightmares, I would say. So they really need a bit more preparation and in-depth understanding of the details. And it's also a line that you should best not lie to. So if you have a line 1 child, for example, and you tell them that there's a tooth fairy and that she or he brings money, or that there is a Santa Claus, yes, that may be a cute idea because it's a cultural tradition. However, a line 1 is going to dig and try to find evidence. And if they then find out that you lied to them, they're not going to be too happy about that.
That's a really interesting point. And also the lack of not having all of the answers thing, I think can also be a really interesting learning point for a line 1, right? Yes, you want to go deep, but also trusting in yourself that you have the knowledge. And if you don't, in that moment, being able to be like, okay, cool, I don't know all of this, and it's okay. I can go research it later and get back to this person. I think that that's something really important and definitely a point of growth for a 1 line. There's another person in my world who is very much into human design. Actually, she is a human design coach, and she's a 1-3 emo MG. And it was during the sessions that she and I had together that she just stopped bringing notes, and I started asking her questions to help her like explore that 1 line piece of it. And she had so much more knowledge than she thought she did. And that was really cool to like see it come out of her. So I think that there's also like, yes, investigate, but once you have the basis that you have, there's definitely like space for self-trust and growth in that way.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's a very good point that you're making. And it's very clear when a line 1 has done their research. It's not that they need the notes, as you say. And it is very clear when they have done their research because you will hear it. You will hear the confidence. So a line 1, or the lines in general, when you look at them, there are many different facets to it. And to be honest, there are at least 64 different facets to it. So if you really want to, yeah, if you really want to understand your line, your profile, then take a look at every single line 1 in all 64 gates, and you will start to understand what it means to be a line 1. So what we're talking about when it comes to the characteristic of a line 1, it's usually based on the 10th gate, the lines of the 10th gate. So this is going to be reflecting in most of the things that we're going to say throughout this episode. Just take a look at the 10th gate, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you will see some of the things that we covered. However, this can really go on and on. So depending on which sexual interests or how you interact sexually with someone, it's also in the lines. You would be able to check that out in gate 59 and 27. There's also some elements in gate 6 that are really interesting on the bonding aspect. Gate 13 would provide you with the limited perspective of the line. So there's really so much that you can get out of a line. And we're just going to be, again, covering the tip of the iceberg. But if you would like to know more about your roles in life, this is something that you need to dig much deeper into. And the reason why I'm saying all of this is that the line 1 also has the theme of being an authoritarian. So they can be, when they do have the foundation, when they do have all the insights that they need or the details that they need, and they feel safe and stable on that foundation, you will hear this authoritarian aspect in the way that they speak. They will be very clear in what they want and how they behave. You can see this, for example, as well in Ra. He was a 5-1. And he also spoke like this. He said that he spoke like this since he was a child. So it's not something that happened throughout the life or that he acquired. It's really innately inbred into him.
So freaking cool, man. So freaking cool.
Yeah. I'm just obsessed. I can go deeper and deeper into into each line, but For the beginning, I think this is a great intro for line 1, and it's also, as I said, super important to recognize if this is your personality that is looking for these details and needing these details and this investigatory aspect, or if it's your physical body and your physical environment.
I have a really good example of that when we get to the 2 line.
Well, then let's get to the 2 line.
Let's get to the 2 line. So the 2 line is considered the Hermit, and I feel like the name says it all. 2 lines very much thrive in their aloneness and having alone time. That's not to say that every 2 line is going to be an introvert who needs to be at home every weekend, right? Like I am, what is it called? It's like an extroverted introvert, but there's like a word for it. It's like a flexitarian, but not. And now I can't remember what it is.
I call it socially antisocial.
That's another way of saying extroverted introvert. Omnivert. There's actually a word. So I'm an omnivert, and I don't consider myself, I'm a 2 line as a hermit, but that's part of my design, right? So as a 6-2, and similar for, literally same, I was going to say same, similar, same for you, Miko. But I think as having a 2 line, the alone or making space to not necessarily have plans or to be with other people, I call it not peopling, is really important to like recenter, recalibrate. And there's definitely different ways to approach this. I have a lot of 2 lines in my life, so I feel like speaking to it. My husband is also a 6-2, and the way he alones and doesn't people is by playing video games. The way I alone and don't people is by watching trashy Netflix reality TV. It's magical. And I feel, I think the big part of this is doing something, whether it's physical or not, that makes you feel refreshed, right? And maybe sometimes that's going for a walk with like a book or a podcast, true crime, in your ear, or maybe it's vegging out on the couch, and I think it can look different for different people, but there's definitely recharging that happens when you're alone as a 2 line. The difference I've seen in design 2 line versus personality 2 line, I think is quite vast. So my mom is a 2-4 emotional MG, so the 2 line being part of her personality. And she has a very customer service forward facing job, and she's quite literally down and out after that 8-hour shift. Like she will go home and nap and shut out to the world completely. And it's really interesting to see her 2 line next to my dad, who is also a 6-2 emotional MG, who hermits cyclically, and I guess again an extroverted introvert, right? Like an omnivert. And it's really interesting to see them not have synced like hermit cycles and be frustrated with each other. But my mom, I would say, is definitely more of like a needs her alone time daily to recharge and reset. Whereas my dad, having it in his design, especially being emotional, is more cyclical. And it's really interesting to kind of just see that change. And obviously we're going to get to the 4 and the 6 lines and the 5 line and the 3 line separately. And those also play a different role and a different impact. But that's my take on the 2 line. It's very interesting now that I know what it is, and how I'm seeing it present itself in other people is so insightful.
Yeah, hermiting is a very big part of the 2 line, or the 2nd line. However, we really have to be careful about this, because sometimes the 2nd line loves to just hibernate and not come out anymore, and that often happens. So the 2nd line is known for being a natural talent. They have just skills in doing things naturally. They don't necessarily have to learn much about something. They just intuitively do it. And it's kind of like when you're watching a 2nd line do their thing that they're naturally talented at. It doesn't look like they're thinking about it. They're just doing it. They're in the flow. They're in the zone. And when a 2nd line is being told over and over again that they're not good enough at doing that, or that they that they should follow this, and then they get knocked down for some other reason. Because, for example, a second line needs to be called out. It's very important for a second line to be called out. They need to be kind of brought out of their hermit mode. However, they really need to be super careful about which invitation they follow, which call do they follow. And this is where strategy and authority comes back in. So this is the basics of every single thing we're going to be talking about, always goes back to strategy and authority, to be able to make the right decisions and to decipher which opportunities are truly here for you. And when a second line is being told, for example, hey, you're very good at that, why don't you go meet someone that maybe your parents know? They try to tell you, hey, this person could be really good at for you, and this career could be very good for you, this school could be very good for you. And if you're getting influenced by these things, by these other people, this can be very challenging, because you're then thinking that the decision you've made of actually following through with this was something that was good for you. However, you didn't listen. If you didn't listen to your inner authority or your strategy, it may have been the really wrong choice to make, and you were just thinking that the person suggesting that and wanting the best for you, probably, it was actually not your choice, it was their choice that they wanted you to make. So a second line, when it keeps facing these things over and over again, and it doesn't feel like it's being valued for their natural skills, or it's not good enough at what they're doing, that's when they start to hibernate more and more and more and go into hermit mode and come out less and less and less. So that can be a big challenge.
Dude, this was like a therapy sesh real quick. I just had some like aha moments. Oh my God. Of like kind of being projected on. I think that's a really interesting piece of it. Being projected on by two lines is also very interesting. Wow. That's my childhood. Holy shit, Miko. How much do I owe you? How much was this therapy session?
Just love.
Okay, cool. I got you. Easy. Damn, dude. But
yes,
I think you're right.
This is a really important keynote that you're mentioning right now, being projected upon. And the second line and fifth line are very closely linked. So there's always a harmonic line. The first line is in harmony with the fourth, the second with the fifth, the third with the sixth. And in this case, the second line does get projected upon. They also have this, just like the fifth line. And when we go back to the example of the house, you can see that the second line is maybe in the house drawing a picture, and it's a masterpiece, and people in front of the house are looking in, and they can look into the house, and they can also see and what you can do, but they also see what it is they want. So it's a projection onto the second line as well. It's not as strong as on the fifth line, where when it's dark on the second floor and you literally see your own reflection in a lot of ways. But the second line also has a bit of this syndrome that people are just reflecting what they want you to be, what they want you to do. And you have to just be very careful about deciphering if it's really something for you or not.
Damn. This is better than therapy. I think the other really interesting point is, you kind of touched upon it, but like the hyper focus a two line can achieve, or like can get into, it can be really beneficial, right? If you're doing something you're super passionate about, it can be really beneficial. And I think the other important note is that you need to, at least as a manifestor, I need to inform the people around me that if I'm in that mode, I cannot be disturbed, because then it's really hard to get back into that hyper focus mode. And if you guys find that to be the case too, try a do not disturb sign, or try having, like, if it flows with like the rest of your design, maybe having set hours that people can't knock on your door or disturb you, or the latter, right? Like having specific office hours if you're working in a company or if you have employees, so that you have dedicated time to like interact with others, but also you have dedicated time to do you and focus heavily on allowing yourself to like go into those deep concentration modes, because that's where you thrive. And to have them broken or to have someone interrupt you, it sucks. And then I don't know, I feel frustrated, or yeah, I guess it's just frustration when I'm interrupted. Sometimes I can like tune out whatever's happening, but oftentimes it's really hard to get back in flow. So definitely take note on that.
Yeah, and this is another good point when we're talking about the lines. So again, you really have to take the rest of your chart into consideration, as well as your type, for example. That's going to have a big impact. So for Celestina being interrupted, that's additionally challenging as a manifestor, because once they're in the flow, this goes back to the repelling aura. That's there to keep them in the flow. It's not there to necessarily push anyone away per se to hurt them. It's just so that the manifestor can stay in their flow and create the things to have the impact on others. So again, your type, very, very important, as well as the combination of the other line in your profile. Also super important.
Does it feel less so for you being a projector in a 2 line if someone interrupts you?
Yeah, I feel it feels a little less, but I'm not sure if I can answer that question, actually. I mean, it's hard to know what you're feeling and what I'm feeling when we're being interrupted.
Yeah.
I think where I see it a lot is in my father, who's a manifesting generator. So then the anger comes out when he's being constantly interrupted. So he's someone it takes a lot to bring that out of him, and he needs to get interrupted a lot of times over and over again. However, I do see that in him, that it drives him crazy when he's being interrupted over and over again.
Yeah, it's interesting. So my mom being the 2/4, she, especially if it's like QuickBooks or something, right? Like if she's doing the books for the business, she has to be hyper focused into it. And like if you ask her a question, she'll be like, no, not now. And like she's very conscious of it, which I think is really cool. But my dad will drop anything, especially if I ask for it. He'll drop anything and do it, which is really interesting. Being a 6'2" MG, again, I would have to look the rest of his chart, but maybe it's just because it's me. I don't know.
Yeah, and because they're both emotional, this could be very well linked to their emotional wave. So if one is collective, one is individual, one is tribal, everything just changes with the dynamics in your chart. That's why you need to be aware of the rest of it as well.
Totally. Well, I think we've labored on about the 2 line enough.
Yes. Now the 3rd line. The 3rd line is often being misrepresented, I would say. So the 3rd line is a lot about finding out what doesn't work. It is not about making mistakes, which is often labeled this way. When they are living in their not self, then they will make a lot of mistakes. However, if they're living in their natural flow, and if they're doing and acting the way, like if they're following their inner authority and strategy, then the 3rd line is here to find out what doesn't work. It's a bit like a scientist, maybe. So they will find things that don't work. They will then figure out why it's not working, and they will make a better place this way. They often have life bumping into them. So things just happen to them. And today we're talking on a 3rd line day.
We are.
So this is a typical, you can also, everything we're saying, you can also relate that to the days of the week, for example. On a 3rd line day, you should, for example, avoid taking transportation because things can bump into you more. However, this is just a little advice that this could happen to you, and that doesn't mean that if someone does bump into you, who knows what turns out of this incident. Would you like to add something to the 3rd line?
Yeah. I think the 3rd line underestimates the the life lessons that they're gaining through these trial and error periods, or the learning by doing, if you will, right? Because there's so much wisdom that is being garnered by learning through doing, learning through action, learning through sometimes mistakes, but I don't see it as learning through mistakes. Everything is a learning experience, right? This is coming from someone who has experienced a bit of third line-ness as a sixth line, which we'll get more into. But I think that there's always opportunities to learn, and those learning opportunities are going to help you share with others. Obviously, following your strategy and authority if you need to be invited into sharing, or if you're just sharing your wisdom all around. But you're going through this to help others. And I think that that's a really cool piece of the third line. It just brings a different perspective, and it can really help people if they're open to it as you're sharing.
Yeah, and this is what will happen throughout your life. So the first time a third line hears this about themselves, that they are going to face a lot of challenges and they're going to have to fight through these challenges and figure out what the learning experience is out of that. Maybe this can be a bit shocking. A lot of third lines, they also know that this is happening to them. So the only way to get out of this frustration about this, if you do have that, is that you get to understand the world through being pushed down, but you're always going to get back up. So a third line is super, super resilient, whether it's in your mind or in your character, or if it's in your physical body. Wherever that third line resides, it makes you very resilient to go through these challenges. You get stronger and stronger by going through them. So take this as step into warrior mode, basically. You are here to be a warrior and to fight these battles, and you're getting stronger and stronger by doing so.
My mind went straight to Chumbawamba. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Yeah.
So true. Yes. Oh, we should play that. But then we're going to get copyrighted on YouTube.
Yeah, no. Sorry, guys, that you just had my vocals on it. You're welcome.
So another thing about the third line is that it's very connected to the material world. And Ra held a whole lecture on this, which is also very interesting, about looking at your third lines. Wherever you have third lines in your profile, this is where you can make money. I mean, you can also lose it theoretically if you're in your not self. But you can also make money in these areas. So this is a tiny little hack. Just look at wherever your third lines are, check out the gates and try to understand how you can use this energy to make more money. This, again, depends on whether it is in a defined or undefined center. Then you will have more or less consistent energy flowing towards this. So this is also something to bear in mind. However, it can be a fun little exercise to do.
Dude, I have I have 9 3 lines in my chart. There's plentiful opportunity to make money.
And you have the money line in general, the channel.
I do. All right.
Good stuff.
Come on, universe. What are we doing?
Yeah, it's very fascinating to look into these aspects. And then it's, again, goes back to strategy and authority. You need to wait for the right opportunities to come knocking and also decipher which ones are the correct ones. Because as soon as no matter if you have the third line in a gate, if you're forcing it, it's not going to happen. If you are entering into it incorrectly, it's not going to happen. So if you're a projector, for example, and then you go through your gates and you're like, oh, there's a third line here, there's a third line here, I can use this, I can do that. And then you start to initiate, it's not going to work.
However, my manifestors out there, do that. Do actually go do that.
Do that. Inform before you do that.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Tell the people, then do the things.
Yeah, so that's a little bit about the third line. Again, there's just endless more stuff about it. But let's go to the fourth line. So we're now stepping out of the lower trigram, out of the personal karma or personal aspects of the profiles and lines. And we're stepping into the interpersonal, the fourth line.
All right, I'll start us off. So the fourth line is called the Opportunist. I like to think of this as someone is looking for an opportunity to connect with others, right? To find their community, it's not just like being sleazy and being like, oh, is this an opportunity for me, right? I feel like it's more complex than that, and the name doesn't do it enough justice. I see it as looking to find your people, and from like an entrepreneur or like, yeah, I guess an entrepreneur perspective is like people connecting like via word of mouth and building your tribe in that sense. There's more complexity to this, but I'm not going to take on too many little pieces at once. So maybe we can start here and then continue the conversation back and forth, because 4 lines intrigue me in like a good way.
I assumed. We all assumed. Yeah, the fourth line is more of a familiar networker, I would say. So it's still connected to the personal in a way, because it's just the next level. It's just the beginning of the next level. So the connections that you are all about are more in connection to your personal network already. So even while dating, for example, it is about being introduced through your network already, being introduced to someone. So I would not recommend a dating app to a fourth line person. That would probably not be the best way to approach the thing. Then it also depends on your strategy, how to interact with someone in the first place anyways, depending on your type. So these are all things to just bear in mind, but the fourth line really is more about networking and your tribe, as Celestina said. It's not about going up to strangers necessarily.
What I've found with fourth lines is, so I'm a natural connector, and that's not in my profile, it's just part of my chart. But I'm a natural connector, and the 4 lines that are in my world, I find that they benefit heavily when they can be warmly introduced to someone else, right? And again, just going back to the entrepreneur world, because that's where my life has been the last like 7+ years, that introduction can be a game changer for them, right? So if you have 4 lines in your world, or if you are a 4 line, really lean into the people that you know, like, and trust already to form other relationships, whether it's business related or personal related, right? Like really lean into that, and that's how you're going to find your peeps.
Yes. Totally agree with that. 100%.
I think the other piece of the 4 line that is really interesting is the need for security. And I've seen this so many times happen in my mom in particular, of like wanting to leave a particular job, but the fear of not knowing what's on the other side, right? Like if you don't have something lined up already, it's really scary to leave a position. And I'm using that as an example because I feel like most people can probably relate to that. So the 4 line needs to have a backup, needs to have like a game plan, whether it's personality or design, right? Like whether you're actively seeing it in your world, like in your personality, or you're feeling it in your body, you need to have some kind of game plan. And I feel like that's so interesting because I cannot relate to that for shit. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's with the 4th line, they really need the foundation. So now we're stepping onto the 2nd floor. So that's the foundation of the 2nd floor. And it's really about having ground to stand on. So for a 4th line, what is recommended is not to look for a job once you've quit your job. You need to do that before quitting or before leaving your job, because that gives you a certain foundation and stability. And then you will also be far more attractive to the people that you're applying to. That is really what it's all about when you're a fourth line. Having this foundation and stability is going to provide you with a much stronger, much more appealing aura, and people are going to be more interested in hiring you. This also goes for relationships, and I would like to touch on that because it's a topic that is often also not very nicely spoken of, which I can totally understand. And it's not about going out there and cheating on your partner, but it's about when you're in a relationship and you don't feel very comfortable about it anymore, or you don't feel very happy about it, you're going to have a better chance finding a new partner when you're still in that relationship, because you still have that foundation and you still have that kind of safety to it. So fourth line, what can happen a lot to them is that when they are in a relationship, they will become even more attractive to other people. So especially if they're in a happy relationship. So it's not about then letting yourself go and going out and cheating on your partner. You can have an open relationship. That's also a possibility. No one says anything against that. However, it often happens with the fourth line that when they are in a partnership, they will meet someone else. And then the bond can become stronger and stronger. And usually the fourth line would then shift into the next relationship. So we've all had these friends where they just go from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next, without a concrete break in between. Like it's just a smooth transition. And this can be a very strong sign of a fourth line.
That's really interesting with the relationship piece of it. I'm trying to think if I know, like I know four lines, but I don't know if I've seen that happen. But it's really cool to now have this perspective and observe.
Well, maybe they are also people that are single for a long time, because when they leave a relationship before having found someone else, it can lead to that. They can be jobless, they can be relationshipless, they can be even homeless sometimes if they leave their home before having a solid alternative. So these are all options. And then again, it depends on it being in your personality or in your design.
Very cool.
Yeah. The fifth line, on the other hand, is a external networker. So they are more about meeting people on the train, in a cafe, out and about on the street, something like this. And these connections can be very, very correct for them. However, a fifth line is often projected upon. So this is the other thing, the connection to the second line as well. They are often being projected upon, and they're often seen as the hero of the story. So they are seen as the superhero that can save everyone, and that's kind of the expectation that you often have of a fifth line. Or you would project onto them all the things that you think they can be. So if you want a great partner, a great lover, a great business partner, or just whatever you think, like if you meet a doctor that has the fifth line, you may think, oh my God, he's such an amazing doctor, I will trust him with the surgery. And it may have been a fifth line. So for the fifth line, it is extremely important to only agree on doing things when they are attuned or they are in line with their inner authority and with their strategy. Because if someone asks the fifth line, hey, can you please help me with this? And the fifth line says yes, but they are actually not sure that they really can help with this, the other person is going to take it so badly if they're not able to provide the help that they wanted. It's going to be even worse than with any other line. They're really going to be disappointed.
I need more unwrapping here, because the fifth line perplexes me beyond belief. And perhaps it's because my interactions with five lines have been with 5-1 emotional manifestors, and maybe there's like maybe it's multifaceted, right? Like maybe I can't understand it because of their repelling aura as another person who has a repelling aura. So maybe it's like we're two magnets with similar poles, like opposing each other. Maybe that's why I can't see in. Or maybe the way you described it earlier, right? Like being inside the house or being outside the house and not being able to see in. But it just perplexes me. And I really, like, even with this description, I'm still like, I still don't understand fifth lines because I don't know. They seem, like you said, very attractive to others. And again, I'm thinking of people who I know in the entrepreneur space who are packed solid with clients when I know other people who had really rough years, like monetarily in 2023. But the 2 5-1s that I know wrecked it in 2023. And they're both, they're both manifestors, and they both actively share about their income, and that rubs me the wrong way. So maybe that's also like adding into the I don't understand fifth lines thing because I'm kind of repelled by that. But yeah, dude, can you explain more? Guys, I'm not going to add much to the 5-line conversation because I'm just so perplexed.
I think one of the reasons, I mean, it's not a line that is extremely clear to me personally either. I would need to be the one living it, I would say.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we don't have anything in common with the fifth line, you and I,
Being
with a 6-2.
Yeah.
So there's no harmony and no personal experience or understanding of a fifth line unless we have them in some of the other gates. So that's how we could start to understand them a little bit more. But a fifth line is...
I have 1 in my Pluto. 1.
See? So that is a very big reason, most likely, why they are such
and it's part of my design Pluto, like literally the furthest away from me being able to understand this.
It could be in your Neptune design. That would be even more veiled. But that's the Pluto is it's a generational planet, so it doesn't really concern you personally too much. So I totally get the mystery behind the fifth line, and to me as well, it's a line that I know and I'm aware of, that it's an external networker. It makes a lot of friends here and there and has a lot of success in doing so, and just cold calling people or cold connecting with people. And what I see a lot in fifth line is this fact that when people ask them to help them and they're not able to fulfill that task, they are really in deep trouble. People are they're getting so upset about it because they thought, okay, this person can do anything and they will for sure be able to solve my problems. And in the end, they're just not able to follow through in that when they have made the wrong decision. So that's why it's so crucial for a fifth line to really decipher who to help and who to support, because if they don't and they're not able to do that, they're going to really receive the full reflection back at them. So you look at a fifth line and you're like, oh my God, they can do everything, and they're so good in what they do, and then you will receive exactly the opposite projection back if you're not able to fulfill that. So people are really going to get very disappointed.
Interesting. I always feel, I think the opposite. I'm like, I'm sure they're for someone, but they're not for me. That's what I feel when I meet at least a 5-1 in the two instances that I've met them in person. I'm like, they're for someone, not for me. So interesting.
And on top of that, with the 5-1, you don't only have this fifth line, but you also have this investigator, and this can be very nitpicking. So very, it can be very difficult, but it's also
3 lines or 3 5s. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I think you're really cool. And then I'm like, I don't understand what's happening.
God, yeah. So you can see there are always going to be lines that we connect with more or less, and that's the fascinating
I only
thing.
have I got 2 4s and 6 2s all up in my life, and some 1 3s, but that's that's what my life consists of. And I'm cool with that.
That makes sense.
It's so interesting though. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for kind of unveiling the 5-line. And if there are 5 lines out there, if you guys want to describe your life to us, that'd be great. That'd be greatly appreciated to have a 5 lines perspective on this, because we can only share what we've read or worked with clients on, but having someone else's perspective, I think, is so helpful, especially in this. I've asked 5 lines before, but this 5-line in particular didn't know herself well enough or her human design well enough to be able to give me a definitive answer. So if you guys are at least a little bit deeper into your journey, it'd be really helpful, I think, for us to understand this better from your perspective too. So please feel free to share.
Yes, I would also love to hear more about it. So I'm just looking right now at the other definitions of the 5-line, or the other aspects of the 5th line. So for example, the projected attitude is the general, which is also something that I can see how you may not connect with it too much, because you as a manifestor, you're already here to kind of have this leadership energy about you. So another 5th line coming in, I can see how that can be a bit challenging.
Yeah.
And
it's just perplexing.
Yeah. Yeah. And on 5th line days, what is said that also the themes of selfishness and selflessness can come up more. So these are just a few more insights into the 5th line.
Yeah. Cool.
The 6th line. Would you like to get started?
Of course. Thank you for saving the ones that I actually understand for me.
Anytime.
Thanks, Boo. Yeah, so the 6th line is the role model. This is a really interesting one that I kind of alluded to earlier, like understanding the 3rd line, because the 6th line is broken down into kind of 3 different stages of life. So 0 through 30, it's basically this period of trial and error. As a 6th line, you're essentially a 3-line for the first 30 years of life-ish, right? It's like 28-ish years of life, basically until your Saturn return-ish. And then the second part of your world, your life, is called on the roof, and that's 30 to like 50-ish, right? Don't quote me exactly on these dates, right? Because they're going to be very different per person. Some people have this happen earlier in life, some people a little bit later. So that's why I'm saying ish. The on the roof piece, and then 50 and beyond basically become like the wise owl, the embodiment of the role model that you've had your whole life to kind of work on. So that 0 through 30 piece, the learning by doing, learning through that trial and error piece, really sets you up to be on the roof. So I had a very different 0 through 30 than Miko did. And she even questioned, she's like, are you even a 6th line though? Like, did you even trial and error your life? We can maybe share a little bit. Definitely not. But yeah, so let's maybe start with the 0 through 30 piece, because we've both thoroughly experienced that. And then we can kind of explain what the on the roof piece feels like for us, and then what we seemingly understand the 50 and beyond piece to be. Yeah, would you like to share your trials, tribulations, and errors of your 0 through 30 ways?
Yeah, I had to...
In a summed up version, maybe?
How much time do you have?
Not an 8-hour drive to Italy from Switzerland.
So I just hired someone yesterday, and she also asked me to explain all my why. Why did I get into opportunity? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And for that, I had to really go back. I had to explain everything about my childhood and teenage years, because it's a huge part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And
yeah.
People that are meeting me today, they often don't relate to the person that I used to be. They don't understand how I am the way I am today, while having been someone totally different before 30. So the 0 to approximately 30 it's everyone has a different Saturn return. So depending on when it is, your period of kind of transitioning onto the roof happens 2.5 years approximately before and 2.5 years later. So you would usually get a Saturn return reading only 2.5 years after it actually happened. This would be the most impactful to you. And to me, I can really see that transitioning. It's very crazy. I was a completely different person before that time than I am now. And I was drinking a lot. I was smoking a pack a day. I was eating junk food to get over the hangover. I had a list of all clubs and bars in Berlin that I wanted to go to, and I marked them. Like, it had a color coding system. So this is the
She's also a quad left, guys, in case you didn't get that.
Yeah, I was very, very different. And although I came from a very sheltered, very loving, very caring home where my mom cooked for me. We didn't have any kind of frozen food at home. I didn't know what a freezer was, what a microwave was. I still don't know how to use it. I always ruin my food when I use microwaves. So yeah, I came from that and decided, hey, it would be a great idea to ruin my physical body and mind and emotions. And I don't know, I just made all the craziest decisions. A complete adrenaline junkie. I wanted to have the fastest motorbike and the fastest car, and just, yeah, it was very, very, very different. And I tried it all. I don't regret any of it because every single decision that I made helped me understand myself better. So this is really what the third line is about, or this period of the sixth line as well, to try it all out and to understand through these trials and errors your own personal way. So the first part of the sixth line, 0 to approximately 30, is really about understanding life through your own experiences. Understanding it because you did it. And the second part is about observing what other people are doing, what is working and not working for other people. The first part is what is working and not working for me. And then you accumulate both of these halves and you kind of create your own thing out of it, your understanding of life itself. But you can also be creating a concept out of it, a program, or whatever it may be. This was my third line. How was your third line?
Yeah, I was a good kid. I didn't do any of that, which is really interesting because when you and I were reflecting on this, like in person, the first time we met, you were just like, dude, what? You didn't do anything? And it's interesting because reflecting back now, I think that my learning was in work stuff. So not relationship stuff, if that makes sense. So I met my husband when we were 18. We were really good friends until we started dating at 21. And I've said to him like multiple times, like I've just felt like I've known him forever. And I wonder if we've known each other in another life. And that piece of it just came really easily, you know? But all of my work stuff has definitely been learning by doing, learning by error. By the time I was 25, I had been a manager, had worked in a hospital, had left a restaurant that I didn't like, and then probably had 5 or 6 more other jobs related to like the culinary nutrition world, but in completely different ways. I recorded, edited, and like produced videos for like a cooperative extension, which is basically like a land grant school. So they like help the community out. I had taught at the university level without my master's. Don't know how that was legal. To both doctors, like baby doctors, I call them, but like 4th year med students. They're not actually doctors for babies. They're just young doctors. And for like basically my peers. I think I taught people who were like 4 or 5 years younger than me, which was also kind of crazy. And then I started my own business where I started using all of these skills in course development and video editing and just being more comfortable on camera. Because prior to taking that job, I would literally get butt spasms if I had to present in front of someone. So I think there was a lot more growth in like work for me and like the business side of things for me that really prepared me to be the entrepreneur and now manager leader that I am now. So yeah, it was trial and error in very different ways. I still drank, but not to the point of needing junk food to do my hangover things. I definitely smoked a bunch of weed, but didn't do anything else. So that's legal now, guys. Okay? Don't come at me.
Well, I also had that part additionally. So I studied psychology, criminology, photography, communications design. I studied for the health practitioner. I had lots of different things going on in that aspect as well. So that is a very valid point. I think this is really, it depends on the rest of your chart as well. It depends on what you're here to learn. So I have the channel of shock, and transformation, which is also very much connected to priest and priestess. And to me, I had to go through a lot of personal challenges and also trauma in certain ways, because this is what helps me to support my clients. So I think because you also have the Moneyline channel, for you it makes total sense that it is more on the not financial aspect, but business aspect.
And I've felt very secure in the relationship that I have with my husband since we've been friends, like beyond like being intimate, which I think is really cool. So I haven't really had the, oh my God, what am I doing in that shape of my world. But I think that that's also helped me focus in other areas in learning and growing, because I haven't had to learn and grow through trial and error in relationships, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now how do you feel on the roof?
The roof is not on fire, thank God.
Let's not continue that lyrics.
The roof has been interesting. I think the first time I really started to feel it was I actually in 2022, earlier that year, I had gone to a mastermind through an in-person mastermind of a mastermind that I was in. And I had just started to feel the difference of, the way I describe it is having a conversation with the person in front of you, but then also seeing that conversation from like a meter or a yard up, right? And like being in the room and having this conversation, but also seeing it from a completely different perspective. And I think the first time I like actually recognized that was a conversation you and I were having in Italy, during our retreat that we held. And it was the weirdest thing to have a conversation with you, but then also recognize that I was processing it and seeing it through a different lens. And I think that was really cool to notice. And since then, it's happened so many more times. And it gives me this really cool perspective of being in my body, but also being out of my body, to reflect and recognize when something is for me or isn't for me, which I think is really cool. I actually had an example of that happen this week when an employee of mine came up to me and told me that it was definitely a cultural difference, right? I'm working in a very international country. I'm living in Australia now. Managing from an American perspective a very international group of people. This guy happened to be French, and he was offended by the way I managed and by the way I reprimanded, because he stole Coca-Colas, seemingly insignificant, but the way it was handled was not insignificant. He told me that I need to learn how to manage my anger as a manifester. Can't we just have a minute of laughter? Oh my God. Yeah, so that was interesting. Yeah. And in the moment, I didn't think anything of it, but then I had reflection on the whole conversation and the way he didn't really respect me at all in the way I chose to reprimand, and then subsequently the way he approached me afterwards. I don't know. That whole situation that I had time to reflect on, dude, it was a major heart pull to be like, deuces, boo boo kitten, for a multitude of reasons as well. Like, he sucked at his job. But all that to say is I had that conversation on one plane, and then I allowed myself the time, not in that moment, but post facto, to have the aha moment of like, dude, wait, what just happened? And how can I respond and take action on this in a way that feels good to me? So that's what On the Roof feels like to me now. What about you?
I have a feeling that this was already before I stepped onto the roof, that this self-reflection process happened more and more. But just because I was also more focused on such techniques through yoga, through meditation, through mindfulness, things like this. So it just came even before going on the roof. I do feel like it's more about observing what works for others and what doesn't work for others. So I'm really kind of gathering and collecting even more insights on what I see other people do and what I feel works for others. I still do my own thing as well, but I feel like I am pretty certain of what works and what doesn't work for me in a lot of aspects. I'm aware that this keeps shifting and changing throughout life, but I do feel like my attention is more towards the people around me, or just even gathering information online or from mentors or things like this. Even my clients, I feel I learn a lot from my clients.
That's interesting. I think that might be a difference in our types.
That could very well be.
Because I can see the team that I'm building right now. I can see where their skills lie, and I can find a really good position for them. So when you were saying this, that's where my mind goes, is like recognizing what someone's skill set is and being able to put them in a position that highlights their skill set and where they can thrive. But I think that also comes down to the only channel that I have, the 4521, right? Like the resources piece, and seeing where they can thrive and giving them the resources that they need to succeed. So I feel like there's so much like gray area about how all of these things are triggered, right? It's not just you're a 6 line, you're on the roof, this is how you see things. It's let's look deeper in, sorry guys, hit that. Let's look deeper in the chart. And is it type related? Maybe. Is it channel related? Maybe. So it's really interesting to see the nuances that we've experienced, but then also relate it back to what our charts, our charts are, or what our charts
it's
depict.
A combination of everything, and it can even go deeper into tones, colors, and bases. There are just so many layers in human design, which is also why it's not necessary to really understand every tiny little detail about your design. And it always goes back to strategy and authority. Just applying that, all your design will fall into place. You're going to start deconditioning yourself, and things will just appear from inside of you. Basically, you're going to live your design more and more. And the 6 line to me is it's also a bit of a mystery. Just while we're going through, I think it's going to also unveil itself more and more. And then let's see what happens at our Chiron return. So that's around 50s. The funny thing is I just checked your chart and my chart for the Saturn return. And while yours was in 2022, February of 2022. And mine was
aware of it, very aware of it.
Yeah, February 24th of February 2022, and mine is on the 17th of February 2017. So I'm way past. But it's also, I mean, Ra, as I said, he wouldn't even recommend you looking at your Saturn return at the moment. He says to wait 2.5 years at least after passing your Saturn return to feel into the experience first, because it's not from one day to the next shift. It's a shift that, just like evolution, it just takes time.
Yeah, I felt the onset though. Like I felt things are changing, which is really friggin' cool. So
yeah,
if you happen to Google yours when it's happening, I don't know. I'm not saying don't listen to Ra, but it was really helpful knowing things were happening.
Yeah. Not that
we also didn't really touch on it much. Oh yeah, no. It was just happening to me. It's like you're buckled into a car and you have no hands to unbuckle yourself. That's literally what's happening. And then we kind of touched on it. The 50 and above ye old wise owl is kind of how I like to refer to it. I don't have much to say there because never experienced it physically, but my dad is also a 6'2", and I can kind of see like the wisdom that he's garnered, but he's also kind of out of alignment. So take that with a grain of salt, you know?
Very good point. This is a very important and very good point. You will only be able to become this wise owl or wise teacher or guru or however you want to call it. I mean, a guru never calls himself a guru, but it's given, the name is given. Basically, this wisdom is only going to come out of you if you've done the work. Very important. You need to do the work as a 6 line. It's not something that comes easy. It's something that is hard, just like any path of self-love and self-care. It's a really, really, really tough journey. And it needs to be done in order to be this role model version of yourself. Otherwise, it's even after 50, it's not going to help. It's actually, things can get worse after 50 if you haven't done the... That concludes the lines.
I think we did a great job. Let us know, guys.
Yeah, let us know. Thank you for listening until here. We really appreciate it, and we would love your feedback.
Most definitely. The best place to do that is on our Instagram at Hardcore HD. Hardcore HD. Hit us up there. We love to have conversations.
Yes. Thank you again, and hope to see you next week.
Ciao, guys.